ke a le leboga badimo ebile ke motlotlo ka dithuso le dikeletso tsa go nkgontsha go ka tlhaloganya semelo sa me. Open hearts, open minds, the great spirit will look to find a pilgrim's journey is told. A new beauty unfolds. Spirit in the wind, love is the cord that binds us.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Pilgrim. And in this episode, I'm going to be journeying with psilocybin, commonly known as magic mushrooms. Now, psilocybin has been used by shamans for millennia. And the reason I'm wanting to journey with this teacher plant is to assist me to gain better understanding of who I am so that I can walk my spiritual path in an even more clear and directed manner. I will be facilitated by Monica Kromhout, who is regarded as the doyen of psilocybin. She actually has facilitated over 4,000 journeys in the past decade or so. So I'm feeling very much in safe hands, and I need to feel very much in safe hands because I have never taken psilocybin before. In my conversations with her, she has warned me against holding a very specific intention for my journey, saying in her words, Makgati, the mushroom knows you better than you know yourself. So we'll see. I'm certainly looking forward to meeting myself through the eye of psilocybin. I have no idea what to expect.
Good. You just lie there and it will come. There's no ways that it won't. And when you start to feel those feelings and you see things, you don't need to be frightened. It's an intelligence. Do you know that the mushroom DNA is very similar to human DNA? In Mexico, they call them the little people.
Anything else that will assist with having a good or an effective journey?
Make your mind absolutely blank, like an open door into you don't know where, and you just let yourself go. Like riding the rapids on a raft. You just, if it gets rough, you just hold on tight and you keep going. You cannot control it. You can make it worse, but you just go.
I can make it worse if I try to control it.
Then that's when people have what they call a bad experience, is because they're trying to stop it or control it, or they become overly afraid. And there's nothing to fear. 20, 30,000 years people have been using those mushrooms for spiritual purpose. That's all we're doing, just to make a connection with a higher force, whatever that higher force is for you.
I mean, that sounds pleasurable.
Every time has been some extremely pleasurable, but every time has been informative, helpful, reached and helped in some way.
Having met Monica in person, I'm feeling centered. I'm feeling grounded and centered and held by the woman that she is. She just exudes so much gentleness, but also so much certainty in what her work is. So I'm really looking forward to this journey. Monica works with a group of assistants whom she calls watchers, and whilst they were setting up the space, I kept myself busy by the fire, waiting for the opening circle to commence. I'm wanting to get going now so that I can get over the hurdle of the weight. The weight is unbearable. But it's full moon. It's beautiful by the fire. So I wait.
Our group of watchers have all been assigned roles, and through that we are taught this process of how we work with mushrooms. And as we introduce ourselves, we share about who we are. Not necessarily what we are or where we'd like to be or where we're coming from, but what we're doing here this evening and who we are as people. The purpose of this ceremony this evening is connecting with the divine force that is around us, your divine force.
I began to realize that I couldn't do this on my own. It just started growing. I asked a few people who'd been here a few times if they could help me. And so they got called helpers at the beginning. And that became problematic because it gave the people in the group the feeling they're going to need help. They don't need help. And I started thinking, what do they actually do? They just watch. So they're watchers. And they will be ready to go off and do their own journeys because this has to go around the world. I think that mushrooms is sacred mushrooms is the one thing that can change the world fast.
I heard you earlier calling it soma and the spirit
Yes.
of the mushroom. What do you mean? What is that?
Well, that was a huge thing that happened for me. One day, this voice said, I have a name. My name is Soma. Soma is the spirit of mushrooms. So I go onto Google. Soma. Wow. I thought it was maybe short for School of Mushroom Awareness, SOMA. Not that. Soma is used in the medical world. Psychosomatic, for instance, comes from the word soma. Soma is the name of a very ancient sacred drink in India. It's an ancient psychedelic drink, incidentally. Mm-hmm. It's a psychedelic drink that also, with the same name, has originated in Egypt.
For me, in the years that I've been part of this work and seeing the changes in people, I feel like I'm a different person. Mm-hmm. Hey, Monica? Mm-hmm. One of the things that was always told to me is that if there is any fear that comes in, then just put a smile on your face and just welcome, and it's okay.
How I got introduced to mushrooms was I was working as a paramedic at the music festivals, and I unfortunately firstly saw all the bad stuff because people kept mixing it with alcohol and different stuff. Before Soma, I was an empty vessel, a broken life. I very much wallowed in self-pity. And I played a victim because I saw I got a negative kind of attention from it. But since being able to have or take Soma in such a situation and having a safe space where people look after you, I've popped open into this butterfly, and I've realized my power. And I mean, before it, I used to swallow 14 pills in the morning, antidepressants, all kinds of things that one has side effects, and you get a pill for that side effect, and you get a pill for that side effect. Just stopped it, and it's just been fixing everything. Like a older, more responsible Elzaan is coming to little stupid Elzaan. It's like, you see there where you hurt people and you didn't do right? It wasn't nice.
Gosh, freedom. Well, firstly, Monica, thank you. Thank you for your yes. I have been dissatisfied with the me that I am in the world. And I have known that there is a me beyond this. There's a me that is timeless. There's a me that is connected with divinity. But of course, my ego self is very powerful and very strong, and keeps me, with 1.5 feet on the disbelief side and a tiny portion on the knowing side. And I want to step into knowing, fully knowing. And thank you all the watchers, and thank you all the fellow journeyers.
I've had such a robotic lifestyle where everything's been programmed. Get up, get done, go to work, come home, and the repetition continues. So I suppose for me, this journey is going to be one of figuring out connection with my kids and my wife. The other thing I've realized is I'm so comfortable. And soma puts me in that uncomfortable state, which brings about progress, I suppose. And that's what I'm going to be looking for.
With meditation and all kinds of forms of religion, we're trying to find that truth, but it's clouded. Mushrooms give you the opportunity to read the real sacrament, to read the truth in nature, and it's presented to you in a very clear way. You can have no doubts as to where your journey is heading after you've had this experience. And if you are serious about spiritual growth and about the path of the pilgrim, this is a road that you have to travel at some point. Makgati, I'm so happy to have you with us tonight, and may we all journey well.
A pilgrim's journey is told. A pilgrim's journey is told.
5 grams, please.
I can't wait to talk to you in the morning.
Yeah.
You find psychedelic mushrooms all over the world. There are plenty in South Africa. Obviously, one shouldn't just go and pick any mushroom in the veld. As they say, there are old mushroom pickers and there are bold mushroom pickers, but there are no old, bold mushroom pickers. But these are naturally occurring mushrooms.
We weigh up the mushrooms for each person. Usually it's 5 grams, almost always 5 grams. And those who, once you've had 5 grams 2 or 3 times, you can actually have less and have the same experience. You kind of calibrate to the 5 grams. You don't need to have more and more and more. You can have less and less and less, and you get the same experience.
It's beautiful.
The biggest experience I've ever had was when I had 2 grams. There were 4 or 5 different kinds of mushrooms, different strains, ground up together to a very fine powder, and that is mixed with a juice to drink down.
So I've received my 5 grams of psilocybin, and the rest of the journeyers are also receiving theirs. Very soon we'll all be congregating in the room and having these mixed, and then we'll all drink together. My heart is pounding. I can actually hear my heart going boom, 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 boom inside. And this is, what is this?
This is honey water.
Honey water. And drink as fast as I can. Okay. Thank you.
It all started with a decision I made to celebrate my 64th birthday. So I created an events page on Facebook, and this is about 11 years ago, inviting everyone I knew. I'm told about 300 people came. One person arrived late, a friend of mine, a psychologist from Oudtshoorn, and she brought a little gift, tiny little gift wrapped up with ribbons. And I said, you weren't supposed to bring a gift. So she said, it's food. Put it somewhere safe. And of course, it was mushrooms. A few days after the 64th birthday party, I decided to use those mushrooms. I have never experienced anything like that before. I didn't want it to end. I heard this voice, and the voice said to me, as clearly as anything, your home will be a school for mushrooms. So what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
And I'm not a nutcase. I've never heard voices before. So I didn't know it was the voice of mushrooms. So I was very ignorant. I'd never smoked. I didn't drink a mouthful of alcohol ever. No drugs. I was a good Christian girl. So my immediate reaction was, no. No, not me. I can't do anything like that. And I got the best advice. This voice carried on talking, and it said, you don't need to know anything. Just open the door and hold it open. And we all know that's what we do. We just open the door. We never turn anyone away. I had no idea it was going to grow into what it is now. And later, when I did research, I saw that mushrooms and chocolate, proper chocolate, not artificial chocolate, work together in harmony beautifully, and it enhances the experience.
Because otherwise it'd be too late. You don't want it to be too late. Thank you.
She's very tempted.
As a watcher, you get given a dose as well?
You get 1 gram.
1 gram.
So that you can stay in the plane of the collective unconsciousness within the room. So we all sort of meet up with our frequencies and we all align. So we can always tap into whatever anyone's feeling. And I think it's important.
So even whilst you are journeying, you still have the presence to be aware of what's happening with the journeyers.
Yeah, and I think that's the struggle initially when we start watching. It's not to go too deep into your journey and to be able to be present, to be of service in the ceremony space.
A pilgrim's journey is told. A pilgrim's journey is told.
And it starts to work. Sometimes within seconds, there's no knowing. And sometimes you've got to just wait. And people get panicky and think this stuff doesn't work. Just keep waiting. For some reason, it's taking its time. And then gradually we notice people are now off on their own journeys. I saw the first time waterfalls of light, absolutely avalanches is a better word, of light coming down. It was just too amazing for words, beautiful. Once you've used mushrooms several times, you don't have visuals anymore. Those are like kindergarten, just to attract you the first time, or the second time maybe. But after that, it comes as teachings and insights, and you get lit up with an understanding of something that you weren't even thinking about, and it comes into your head.
Everything becomes heightened. So your sense of hearing, your sense of your vision, your feeling, everything is heightened. Like every little noise can be heard.
Yes.
Every sound, every whisper.
I remember one time I heard the fire crack.
Yes.
And I got such a
It was
fright.
like an explosion.
It was like
crazy.
an explosion.
Yeah.
And I actually jumped at that moment.
And you feel.
Yeah.
And you try and open your eyes because, but I don't even know if I'm opening my eyes or if it's a vision. But it's played out.
But it's played.
And the feeling is projected or received.
Exactly.
And then I went through the emotion of sadness and pain. And I opened my eyes and I look at a journeyer, and they would be in intense pain and crying and sobbing, and I could feel it, and it was almost like they were acting it out for me.
Yes.
And the Soma said to me that this is what we do. You work together to solve and work through your problems.
I had a similar sense in the journey last night where I perceived some heaviness. And I don't know if it was from you or if it was from Lavwa. And I remember at some point thinking, what's that? What's that? But also with a note of irritation. And I was told, Makgati, take that and soothe that. Look on that and bring it in with compassion and with love. And then when I give it back, then it's changed. It's something else.
Synchronicities.
Once I lay down, I think I started feeling a little bit of paralysis, not too much, but certainly a switching off of my main switch somewhere. And then I remember thinking, okay, so there I go. And occasionally my right leg in particular would have these spasms happening. And then the visuals started happening. You know, the lights running and almost like toys all over. And occasionally, you know, there would be these faces in the toys. And I went with that. But there was also a physical discomfort, I have to say. It wasn't an easy just, you know, melting into the experience. There was a sort of, oh, this is not nice in my body. How can I lie down so that I can facilitate the movement of this?
On a first time, very often, and maybe every time, it's as though psilocybin explores this body that it's been introduced to, and explores all over the body to see what's going on here. Mushrooms or psilocybin pick up something that you need to know about. It will highlight that physical thing. In the same way that it will, if there's a psychological thing, it will do the same thing.
True.
I'm a scientist and an analyst professionally. I had a wonderful father that was a minister of religion, and his saying always was, go and find your truth. The whole concept of soul growth and spiritual growth becomes nearly tangible when you have a journey like this. It's if the energy of the cosmos and the DNA that you carry with you all crystallize into one thing and gives you a chance to really see things for what they are, including yourself. You usually start with having the experience of a bit of euphoria, and you see colors, and it works through the medulla, ends up in the deep memory, where you get confronted with the way you have perceived the world. One of the things, for instance, was the black-white that I had in my life. There was no gray areas. Now there's only one big gray area. And it teaches you to just look at yourself. All the things we've built up about ourselves, you get rid of the ego, you get rid of a lot of things that makes it difficult for one to grow spiritually.
I was still deep in an altered state as I labored myself up into a sitting position. I had to pause a bit and find my orientation. My journey last night was about death. And can't breathe. Let go. Okay.
And I noticed you struggling to breathe like that. And I thought perhaps it was the blanket, but it was now your journey.
It was the journey. And Soma took me exactly where I needed to go.
And that's faith. And that's what surrender, it seems, it should be. And also the emotional maturity to take it on. You know, I think there's a time where you'll struggle, and the point where you just let it go and say, you know what, I've been through this.
Yeah.
I'm tired of the same struggle.
Yes.
Let me now take it on.
Yeah.
There's no need to now fight the same fight.
A pilgrim's journey is told. A pilgrim's journey is told.
Oh, look at this sky. I could hardly stand, never mind walk on my own. My entire being had been rattled by the visions I had been shown, each one taking me through the experience so vividly. It was as if I was there in that moment. I'll sit here. Ooh, I'm gonna fall back. I don't know when this happened, but at some point I went outside to the field, and the cat came, and I knew that the cat was sent to say, "You're not alone. I'm not alone." How did you decide to get into the space of taking Soma and then being a watcher on a Soma journey?
I felt that I was doing so much work, like healing work, but in a cognitive way, cognitive therapy. And as a therapist, I know how good talk therapy is, but it was only helping to a point. Like I was doing, and I felt like I was on a rocking horse, like I was doing whatever I needed to be doing, but just not getting anywhere. And then when a friend suggested Soma, first it was like ridiculous, it was drugs, and how could you be involved in this kind of, that I'm a mum, I'm a suburban mum, I just want to do normal, But then the surprising thing is when I met this friend, there had been such a dramatic shift that I could see that groundedness, and I was like, what happened? And he spoke about plant medicine, and I thought, let me. So I just threw myself into it. And when Soma was introduced to me, I felt like I could finally sort of step out of the dependency on the external and looking for answers out there, and somehow locate the source of guidance within myself. And I think that's been the biggest shift, and from the fixing mindset to the slow acceptance of myself.
I got wind of an underground community in South Africa where people are experimenting with and using this in a, not necessarily a medical context, but in terms of general well-being. And so I embarked on a project called the Psychonauts, which I guess you would describe it as it's a serialized audiobook, which looks at the medical potential of psychedelics, specifically psilocybin, looks at the legal context, it looks at the medical context. And there were just peer-reviewed paper after peer-reviewed paper coming out from places like Imperial College London, New York University, Harvard, Johns Hopkins Medical. And these were all the findings of small medical teams that were doing very specific trials using psilocybin with people either with treatment-resistant depression, with nicotine dependence, with alcohol dependence. And what's interesting is that in the research that I've been doing here in the underground community, a lot of people with low-grade chronic depression say that this is how they manage their depression. They'll go for a deep dose session every 3 or 4 months. They'll feel great, and then after about 4 months, they might start to feel that black dog of depression slipping back again. And then they'll go for another dosing session that'll just bump them up for a while, and that's how they use it.
And then the bolts said to me, "You're not alone. Why do you think you're alone? You're not alone." And I think the tears were the release of the sense of aloneness that has walked with me all this time. And I just cried and cried. Psilocybin was giving me a lot to take in.
I had an extremely bad accident, and it had an effect on me. It gave me fears of heights. It gave me nearly a negative concern about most things around me. And I changed completely to being like I used to be, positive, but in a better way.
But you've gone beyond that to something higher, like a deeper soul healing.
Oh yes, that's a beautiful way to see it. I think absolutely. I think we all know if you're the wrong side of 40, I don't know if you are, but, then there comes those times in our lives where something just happens and we say, why did it take me so many years to see this? And all of a sudden, you see a lot of these things in a very short period of time. And it definitely enhances your ability to let all the unimportant stuff fall away.
When people talk about or hear about a psychedelic intoxication, they default to the reference point of alcohol. And if you drink a lot of it, it's a little bit like banging your head against the wall until you black out.
Right.
With psilocybin, it's completely different. Even if your body may not be well coordinated in an intoxicated space, your mind is just opening up and your senses are so heightened with psilocybin. The same is happening for your cognitive process. What is happening in your brain is just amplified in terms of your emotional experience, your thinking through of things. So you're doing a lot of really powerful internal work.
Thank you for sitting with me. Toilet. And then sleep. Oh, soup. Soup.
In the middle of the night, we also serve soup and bread. They just come by themselves. Usually they're quite hungry. The soup is especially made. It's a very important recipe that has grown over time. And now we make it the same everywhere. And it contains all the foods that the person needs to replace what the brain used during the process, because the brain gets very active and it uses up serotonin and a couple other things that are going on in your head. So just to replace all of that.
God. That's really good. Wow.
It's in the soup.
I just bit into something. No, but I just...
Carrots or something?
Hmm?
Carrots.
No, not carrot. Like a berry, like a juniper berry. But how can there be juniper berry in the...
It's none of that.
What did I bite into? That's so intense. No, but this... Is it pepper? It's regular pepper. Oh my God. Of course, without smell, there can't be taste.
Yeah.
I'm gonna fart.
It is a pepper.
It is a pepper. Bite into it. I tell you, it's gonna transport you places. It's so delicious. Please, can I leave my soup for breakfast?
Are mushrooms addictive? Is there a danger of someone like me wanting to do them, I don't know, every week, every month?
This is the fascinating thing, and I think why people struggle to get their head around psychedelics as a medicine is they can't understand how a substance that is regarded as illegal in the way that heroin is could not be as dangerous. The harms and risks of all of these drugs are very, very different. So substances like alcohol and cocaine and nicotine and even sugar, they work on the dopamine system in the brain, which drives addictive behavior. Psilocybin and psychedelics work on a completely different part of the brain. They don't trigger that addictive response at all.
It was always a yearning of, finding love, understanding it on a deeper level, and, just finding inner peace. And through that yearning, it connected me to Monica. It's a journey of finding and remembering who I am.
What is the state in South Africa right now and perhaps also worldwide? I know that there are all these clinical trials happening. Where do you see this going?
So it does look as though this medicine is coming to South Africa. It's not a question of if, but when. So in the United States, the Food and Drug Administration has declared psilocybin a breakthrough medical technology for treating depression. That basically means that they've given it a legal status that is fast-tracking it through regulatory change so that it may be licensed for medical use in the States in less than 5 years. What that means is that lab-synthesized psilocybin will be available for doctors to prescribe and then administer to patients. What is likely to happen is your doctor will give you the script, and then you'll either sit with your doctor or in some clinical context where you will have a trained therapist supervising you.
A pilgrim's journey is told. A pilgrim's journey is told.
I've just woken up. I'm so tired. I feel like I got so worked, and I worked so much that I'm still feeling a little bit shaky. I'm still feeling like I need to get grounding somewhere. I felt like I couldn't breathe a lot. And I remembered being advised that when you come to that gate, to that doorway, go through. And I submitted and I said, if I am to die, let me die. At one point, I was drowning, and then I was washed ashore, but I wasn't a human being. I felt like I was a marine life. And at other points, I was in a grave, and I was a decomposing body, but I actually felt like I was a maggot, and I was just making my way through this, yeah. But it wasn't macabre, it wasn't, it just was. At other points, I was in a coffin. I felt myself being in a coffin, and and it sounded like people were holding a funeral for me. And other times I felt like the deaths were not my deaths. It was an experience of the collective death. And then a part of me right next to me said, Makgati, don't worry. If you can still hear the music, it means you're still alive. So you can surrender. You can surrender to this experience.
The experience of dying, whether it's ayahuasca or mushrooms and maybe other things too, is one of the highest forms of experience in a psychedelic situation. And some people never have it, other people journey for years and then have the experience of death. So it's quite something that you had such multiple experiences right at the very beginning of your very first experience.
Sometimes small groups are very hungry.
As we chatted over breakfast, I looked forward to going home and assimilating what the spirit of the mushroom had gifted me. And of course, to hearing Simon's body, mind, and spirit insights into this life-changing experience.
Morning, Makgati. How are you this morning?
I'm good. I'm excited for our conversation.
Likewise.
As soon as it had settled completely inside of me, the visions started. And the visions some of them were pretty, just pretty lights and joyful experiences. I mean, sometimes I had this upside down, topsy-turvy experience, and I remember giggling, things are upside down,
And then what happened after that?
I was taken through many death experiences. And of course, with psilocybin, every experience feels like it's happening in the here and now, into this physical body. And I remember being so afraid and feeling like, I can't breathe.
Was it something you observed, almost as an image of yourself, or an experience that really didn't have words or images, but more just a subjective sense?
It was part subjective sense. I'm about to die, or I am dying, but I'm also watching myself die. But there was also a sense of being quite impersonal about it.
Were you making choices, or was it just unfolding?
So absolutely, there was a sense of the unfolding of, here are all of these things that are being presented to me. The choice bit came in with other experiences, with other visions that I had, where I had a sense of these, monstrous beings standing in my path. And I remember that I had to walk past them in order to continue on my journey, and making a conscious choice. Makgati, beta pelo. Take courage and walk past.
It's not an uncommon experience for people to encounter death. I mean, you don't die, clearly.
Yes.
Something dies. Because, in psychological language, death is symbolic of transformation, of a great change. In the confronting it, or being with it, or working with it, or it working with you, other layers of insight were revealed.
The next thing that happened was then I had a sense of me going backwards in the womb, not being born, but going backwards in the womb and becoming cells, and maybe even becoming a nucleus. And then I started having a sense of a nipple being formed. And when I looked, I saw that I'm actually suckling on the nipple of Mother Earth. And then when I looked up at her, I saw my own face. I saw that I was carrying myself. And when I looked down, I saw that, yes, this infant that I'm feeding, that I'm nourishing is me.
As a matter of curiosity, as you say that, what is the felt sense in your body in this moment?
Oh, I'm nourishing myself. And I am connected to the earth as much as the earth is connected to me.
One of the most singular experiences of human beings is the feeling of separation from ourselves, from each other, and from nature. I can have intimacy in moments, or I can have connection or engagement, but there's still that I'm still alone. And there's something interesting about the psilocybin experience, which almost universally for people who have really deep experience with it, somehow that infuses its way into the, as a learning, is that you aren't, and you never were, and you cannot be. It's an optical illusion of consciousness, which resonates with the teachings of all wisdom lineages. What happens in the brain on psilocybin,
yes,
as measured by functional magnetic resonance image or functional MRI. Functional MRI looks at relative activity in brain areas as a result of doing something or not doing something. Everybody's baseline before they do a task looks very similar on an fMRI. And the researchers who identified this gave it the name the default mode network. Okay. And the interesting thing that it's associated with in the subjective mental world is known as self-referential processing, which is it's a fancy gobbledygook science word for thinking about myself. On psilocybin, that area goes completely quiet. So the default mode network is down-regulated to a high degree on psilocybin of a particular dose. The people who do the journeying and the watchers call it an egolytic dose. Egolytic means to dissolve the ego. Your personal experience starts to become impersonal at the same time.
Yes.
Intimate and benevolent and engaged, but impersonal.
Exactly.
It's not really about you. So many people would call that transpersonal.
Right.
So when the self-referential processing is diminished, the wisdom is revealed. And science is also incredibly useful because not only the brain science, but the clinical science is like, it starts to create a validation that these substances that you encountered, firstly, can in a way be seen as medicine. The clinical studies that are being emerged are single dosing. Yet the effects are sustained at a year. That's almost unheard of in medicine. Most of us are patterned in very particular ways, mentally, emotionally, behaviorally, relationally. and don't even know it, these large experiences open up new pathways of possibility, which maybe diminish over time, but are never completely lost. Something else is available to me that wasn't available before, based on that subjective experience.
When we gain insight or wisdom, that we can make different choices in response to exactly the same stimulus, and find healing, personally and collectively.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please join me next time as I explore the transformative potential of movement and dance.
Open hearts, open minds, great spirit will look to find a pilgrim's journey is told. A new beauty unfolds. Spirit in the wind, love is the cord that binds us.